My name is Adeline Townsend. I'm 30 years old, and for 26 of those years, I believed I was adopted. Last April at my cousin's wedding in Millfield, North Carolina, my Aunt Lorraine had 4 glasses of champagne and said 7 words that detonated 3 families. What happened in the 5 days after that wedding? The DNA results. The letter I found in my mother's closet. The half-sister I never knew existed. I couldn't make this up if I tried. I took the test on a Monday. By Thursday, 3 families had fallen apart. And the woman who held it all together with silence and Sunday dinners, she never saw it coming. Before I take you back to that Saturday in April, take a second to hit like and subscribe. Drop a comment. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Your support keeps these stories going. Now, let me take you back to Millfield. Population 4,000, the kind of town where everybody knows your name, your business, and who sits in which pew on Sunday morning. It grew up on the 3rd Street past the post office in a yellow house with a chain-link fence and a mother who reminded me weekly how lucky I was to be chosen. Chosen. That word followed me everywhere. My mother, Linda, had a way of saying it that sounded generous. We chose you, Adeline, out of everyone. We chose you. She said it at the dinner table. She said it in the car. She said it when I asked for new sneakers, and she said no because Tyler, my older brother, her biological son, needed baseball cleat first. Tyler is 33, 3 years older than me. He got the bigger bedroom, the first car, the college fund. I got a twin mattress in the room next to the water heater and a clear understanding of the hierarchy. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't neglected. I was fed. I had clothes. I went to school, but there was a line in our house. Tyler stood on one side, I stood on the other, and the line was drawn with one word, adopted. When I was 12, I asked my mom about my birth parents. Just once she cried for 2 hours, sat in the kitchen floor with her knees pulled up, mascara running, telling me I was breaking her heart. My dad, Frank, came home from work, saw her on the floor, looked at me and said, "What did you do?" I was 12. I asked a question I never asked again, not at 13, not at 16. Not at 22 when I graduated with a degree in clinical laboratory science. And nobody from my birth family was in the audience because I'd been trained to believe they didn't want me. That's 14 years of silence. Not because I didn't care, because my mother made caring feel like treason. I put myself through East Carolina University, 4 years of scholarships, part-time lab work, and ramen noodles. Clinical laboratory science. The kind of degree where you spend your days running blood panels and genetic screenings for people who need answers about their own bodies. Graduation day, Linda didn't come. She was helping Tyler move into his new house. Tyler, who'd gotten a down payment from my parents. Tyler, whose house was 40 minutes away. My ceremony was at 2:00 on a Saturday, and she chose to hold a moving box instead. Frank came alone. He drove 90 minutes in his work truck. He sat in the last row with a $12 bouquet from the gas station. I saw him clap when they called my name. That's the image I keep. My dad in steel-toed boots, sitting behind 300 strangers holding grocery store carnations like they were roses. I got hired at Mercer Valley Regional Hospital. Starting salary $68,000. I processed diagnostic tests, hematology, genetic screenings, tumor markers. I confirm other people's worst fears in triplicate, and I do it with steady hands and a calm voice. By 28, I owned a house, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, $145,000 self-financed. No help from Linda, no help from Nana Ruth. No help from anyone with the last name Townsend. Here's the part that still gets me. I process DNA samples 5 days a week. Paternity tests, kinship panels, prenatal screenings. I've told strangers their children aren't biologically theirs. I've watched marriages dissolve on the other side of a lab report. But I never ran my own test, never even considered it because I already knew the answer. I was adopted. End of story, except it wasn't. Every family has a throne. In the Townsend family, Nana Ruth built hers out of 40 acres and Sunday dinners. Ruth Townsend is 78 years old. She's been a member of Millfield Baptist Church since 1972, and its women's ministry chair since 1998. She owns 40 acres of farmland on the north side of Route 7, land worth about $350,000, and she runs Sunday lunch at her farmhouse like a four-star general runs formation. Attendance is not optional. Every Sunday at 1:00, the family gathers around her 12-seat oak table. You sit where she tells you. You eat what she serves. You say grace when she nods at you. And you do not, under any circumstances, question Nana Ruth 6 months before the wedding, October. Nana Ruth called a family dinner to announce her estate plan. I sat at the far end between Tyler's wife, Brooke, and an empty chair nobody claimed. Tyler would receive 15 acres. Megan, David, and Lorraine's daughter, Nana Ruth's other grandchild, would receive 10 acres. The remaining 15 acres would go to the church building fund. My name was not mentioned. I raised my hand. Not dramatically, just a small lift like I was asking permission in a classroom. Nana Ruth, what about me? She looked at me over her reading glasses, patient, almost kind. The land stays in the bloodline, sweetheart, you understand. 10 people at that table. Nobody said a word. I nodded, said, "Thank you, Fordener." Drove home, sat in my car in the driveway for 11 minutes before I went inside. I didn't understand then. But the bloodline she was protecting, I was already in it. Uncle David was different. David Townsend is Frank's younger brother, 50 years old, a carpenter who runs a one-man shop out of a converted barn on Oakdale Road. He builds custom shelving, kitchen cabinets, rocking chairs, quiet man, thick hands, the kind of guy who says more with a nod than most people say in a paragraph. He's the one who showed up every single time. When I was 8, he gave me a birthday present nobody else remembered to buy. A small silver locket on a thin chain. Inside, the letter A was engraved. Tiny, careful script. "That is for you," he said. "Nobody else." Linda watched him hand it to me. She didn't say thank you. She pressed her lips together and turned back to the stove. David came to my science fair in 7th grade, drove 40 minutes. He came to my college graduation, sat 3 rows behind Frank, wearing a clean flannel. He texted me the morning I started at Mercer Valley. "Proud of you, Addie. Always." His wife, Lorraine, was harder to read. She was warm enough, sure, brought casseroles to every potluck, hugged me at holidays, but sometimes I'd catch her watching me. Not with hostility, more like she was measuring something, comparing distances, looking at my face, and then looking away too quickly, the way you do when you've almost said something you shouldn't. I wore that locket every day under my scrubs, against my collarbone where nobody could see it. 22 years. I thought it was a gift from a kind uncle who treated me better than the rest of them did. I was right about the kind part. I was wrong about the uncle. January, 3 months before the wedding, Frank collapsed at the warehouse where he'd managed shipping logistics for 19 years. Mild stroke, right side went weak. They called an ambulance at 10:14 a.m. I was at work, same hospital. I heard his name over the intercom. Townsend Frank incoming and my coffee cup hit the counter before the announcement finished. I ran downstairs. Scrubs, badge, the whole thing. I knew every nurse on the floor. I reached his room in under 4 minutes. Linda arrived 40 minutes later. Coat half-buttoned, purse hanging off one arm. She looked at me standing by Frank's bed, and the first thing she said was not, "How is he?" It was not, "Thank God you were here." She turned to the charge nurse and said, "She's not next of kin, she's adopted, I make the medical decisions." 11 words. The nurse looked at me. I stepped back into the hallway. Frank recovered. He needed rehab, a blood pressure adjustment, and someone close by to monitor his medication. I live 8 minutes from the hospital. I work in the building, but Linda chose Tyler. Tyler, who lives 2 hours south in Fayetteville, Tyler, who visits maybe twice a month. I didn't argue. I swallowed it the way I'd been swallowing things for 26 years with a tight jaw and an empty driveway. That night, Marcus, my boyfriend, 32, civil engineer, the steadiest man I've ever known, sat across from me at our kitchen table and said something I'd never considered. "Babe, have you ever actually seen your adoption papers?" I opened my mouth to answer, then closed it. No, I hadn't. April, Megan Townsend's wedding to Jake Holloway. Megan is David and Lorraine's daughter, 25. Sweet girl. I like Megan, always have. She's the one cousin who never made me feel like a footnote. The ceremony was at Millfield Baptist, Nana Ruth's church naturally, and the reception at a barn venue on Garrett Road. 180 guests, string lights, a country band, the whole beautiful, expensive production. Linda called me the Tuesday before, not to ask how I was doing, not to check if I needed a ride. She called to assign me a seat. You're at table 9 with the cousins. Table 9 across the room from the family tables between Jake's college roommate and his grandmother's neighbor from Raleigh. That's where she put me. Tyler sat at table 1 with Linda, Frank, Nana, Ruth, David, and Lorraine, the bloodline table. I told Marcus. He set his fork down and looked at me for a long time. We don't have to go. I'm going for Megan, not for them. Saturday came. I wore a navy dress I'd bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack. $27. I clasped the silver locket around my neck. Marcus drove. We arrived at the barn at 5:15 p.m. Fairy lights, lavender centerpieces, the smell of bourbon and fresh cut wood. 180 people who all knew each other's business. Nana Ruth saw me first, nodded once, no smile. David saw me second, came over, hugged me, held on a beat too long. I felt his hand press against my back right between my shoulder blades. The way someone holds on when they know something you don't. Lorraine watched from the bar. She was already on her second glass. The reception moved the way small-town weddings do. Slow at first, then louder after the toasts. Tyler gave a speech, stood up at table 1, tapped his glass, and said something about towns and blood running deep. This family, he said, we stick together. Marcus squeezed my hand under the table. The band played, people danced, cake was cut. The photographer circled the room, snapping candids nobody asked for. And Lorraine, Aunt Lorraine, David's wife, mother of the bride, kept drinking. By 9:00, she'd switched from champagne to bourbon. I watched her across the room. 48 years old, hair pinned up, mascara starting to blur. She laughed too loud at something Jake's mother said. She hugged Megan in 10 minutes, both times wiping her eyes. Then she excused herself and walked toward the restroom. Her path took her past table 9, past me. She stopped. I looked up. She was standing close. Close enough that I could smell the bourbon in her perfume. Something floral, something heavy. She looked at my face, then at the locket, then back at my face. David always did have a soft spot for you. She said it quietly, half smile, eyes glassy. Across the room, David saw her standing at my table. I watched his face change. The color left it like someone had pulled a plug. Linda saw it too. She set her glass down, started walking toward us, but Lorraine wasn't done. She leaned closer. Her breath was warm. Her voice was barely above a whisper, and she said the 7 words that ended 26 years of silence. You know, you look exactly like Uncle David, right? 7 words, I laughed, automatic response. People say that sometimes. No, honey, Lorraine shook her head, slow, deliberate, exactly like him. The jaw, the eyes, that little dimple on the left side. Shep pointed at the locket. He never gave Megan anything like that. Not once. Linda reached us, grabbed Lorraine's elbow. She's had too much to drink. Ignore her. Come on, Lorraine. Lorraine let herself be pulled away. She looked over her shoulder at me one last time. Her eyes weren't drunk anymore. They were clear, sad, like she just set something down she'd been carrying for years. Marcus leaned over. You okay? I wasn't, but I nodded. We left at 10. The drive home was 22 minutes. I stared out the window the entire time. Street lights, cornfields, dark houses with porch lights on. And in the passenger side mirror, my own face staring back at me. The jaw, the eyes, the dimple. Marcus broke the silence at the railroad crossing on Palmer Street. You're thinking about what she said. I'm a lab scientist, Marcus. I solve problems with evidence. I paused and I just realized I've never looked at my own. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He just drove. At home, I kicked off my heels at the front door, hung the navy dress on the bathroom hook, sat on the bed in a t-shirt, and opened my laptop. Ancestry DNA kit, $99. Saliva collection results in 7 to 10 business days. I hit purchase at 11, 6:47 p.m. on a Saturday night in April. I'd processed 600 DNA tests that year. It took a drunk woman at a wedding to make me run my own. Adeline just ordered a DNA kit at midnight after a wedding that shook her to the core. If you've ever had one sentence rewrite your entire childhood, you know this feeling. Hit the like button for Adeline. And if you're watching this late at night, I see you. Stay with me. This is where it gets real. Monday. The box arrived faster than I expected. Small, white, a barcode sticker on the side. It sat on my kitchen counter like a grenade with the pins still in. Marcus was at work. I stood alone in my kitchen at 6:30 a.m., coffee going cold, staring at a cardboard box that weighed less than a pound. I'd handled thousands of sample kits at the hospital. Opened them, labeled them, processed them, filed them. This was the same thing, same science, same procedure, different stakes. I opened the box. Instruction card, collection tube, swab, biohazard bag, prepaid return label. I read the instructions even though I could have written them myself. Swab the inside of your cheek for 60 seconds. Deposit the swab in the tube. Seal. Place in biohazard bag, mail, 60 seconds. That's all it takes to start an earthquake. I did the swab at the kitchen sink. Sealed the tube. Wrote my name on the label in the same handwriting I use on lab reports. Neat. Clinical, capital letters, Town's End. Adeline M. dropped it in the mailbox before work. Blue metal door. Click. Gone. At the hospital, I clocked in at 7:15. Normal shift. Processed 19 samples before lunch. 3 of them were paternity panels. I handled them the same way I always do. Gloves, protocol, detachment. But when I pulled the third one from the centrifuge, I stopped, held it up to the fluorescent light. Somebody's blood, somebody's answer, somebody's life about to change. One of these could be mine, I whispered. Nobody heard me. 7 to 10 days. The countdown started. Day 3. Linda called me. That alone was unusual. My mother doesn't call to check in. She calls to assign tasks, deliver opinions, or remind me of obligations. But this call started with, "Hey, sweetheart, just wanted to hear your voice." I held the phone away from my ear and looked at the screen. Linda Town's End. Not a wrong number. "I'm fine, Mom. What's going on?" "Nothing. Nothing, just thinking about you." Her voice was light, too light, like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed in the car. Day 4. Tyler texted me. Heads up. Mom's acting weird. She cleaned out the hall closet this morning. Top shelf. Even pulled down the old shoe boxes. I read that text 3 times. The hall closet, top shelf, shoe boxes. Day 5, Nana Ruth called. This had happened exactly twice in my adult life. Once to tell me Frank was in the hospital and once to tell me what time to arrive for Christmas dinner. Now she was calling to invite me to Sunday lunch. "It's been too long, dear. We'd love to see you." I said I'd be there. Hung up, sat on my porch with Marcus and laid it all out. Linda's cleaning out closets she hasn't touched in years. Nana Ruth suddenly warm and inviting. And both of them started this the same week I sent a DNA sample in the mail. Marcus rubbed his jaw. Either they're genuinely trying or they know something's coming. Lorraine told Linda about what she said at the wedding. And now they're circling. Day 6. My phone buzzed at 6:12 a.m. Not Linda, not Nana Ruth. The DNA company. "Your results are ready." Monday 6:42 a.m. Kitchen table. Coffee untouched. Laptop open. I logged in, clicked view results. The page loaded in segments. Ethnicity estimate first, then ancestry composition, then the part that mattered. Ethnicity, 98.7% Northern European, consistent with the Townsend family tree. I stared at that number. If I was adopted, if I came from another family entirely, why did my DNA match the Townsend's ethnic background so precisely? Coincidence exists, but I'm a lab scientist. I don't trust coincidence. I trust data. I clicked DNA relatives and the floor dropped. David Townsend, parent, 50% shared DNA. Ruth Townsend, grandparent, 25% shared DNA. Tyler Townsend, half-sibling, 23.8% shared DNA. I read it again, then a third time because my training tells me to verify before I react. Parent, not uncle, not cousin, parent. David Townsend is my biological father. I wasn't adopted. I was never adopted. They told me I was adopted for 26 years, and it was a lie. The whole thing, the gratitude, the second-ass status, the exclusion from the estate, the hall closet door, it was all built on a lie. And then Lorraine's voice came back clear as a church bell on Sunday morning. You know, you look exactly like Uncle David, right? She was right. She'd always been right. I closed the laptop, set my hands flat on the table, breathed. 4 minutes, I counted. The coffee went cold. The refrigerator hummed. A cardinal hit the kitchen window and flew away. Then I called my supervisor. I won't be in today. I opened the laptop again because there was one more match I hadn't recognized. Sophie Keller, half-sibling, 24.1% shared DNA. I didn't know a Sophie Keller. I'd never heard the name. But the DNA said she and I shared a father. One question answered. 2 new ones I wasn't ready for. I spent 2 hours on the DNA platform. Cross-referencing Sophie Keller, 27 years old. Listed location, Bremerton, North Carolina, 45 minutes southeast of Millfield. She shared 50% DNA with David Townsend. Same as me. That meant David didn't just father one secret child. He fathered 2 with 2 different women. I sent Sophie a message through the platform, kept it simple. Hi, Sophie, I think we might be related. I'd like to talk if you're open to it. She responded in 47 minutes. I've been waiting for this message my whole life. We talked on the phone for 90 minutes. Sophie's voice was quiet, careful. She chose her words the way I choose mine, like someone who's been trained to hold things in her story. Her mother, Janine Keller, always told her that her father was a man who left before you were born. Sophie grew up in Bremerton with Janine and a stepdad. Tom Keller, who married Janine when Sophie was 3. Tom and Janine divorced when Sophie was 10. Tom still sends birthday cards, still calls her his daughter. Sophie took a DNA test 2 years ago, searching for her biological father. No matches then. The databases were smaller. But this year when I submitted mine, the algorithm connected us. So David is your father too, Sophie said. Not a question. Yes, and nobody told you either. No, they told me I was adopted instead. Long pause. Then Sophie said something that sat in my chest like a brick. One affair I could almost understand. 2 children by 2 different women hidden for decades. That's not a mistake, Adeline. That's a system. She was right. And the system had architects. Tuesday afternoon, Linda works at the flower shop from noon to 5. Frank was home resting in the recliner with a blood pressure cuff on his arm and a cross word on his lap. I drove to my parents' house, parked in the driveway behind Frank's truck, went inside. Frank looked up from his puzzle. Addie, wasn't expecting you. Hey, Dad, I need to grab something. A form at work needs a copy of my adoption paperwork, medical records thing. Frank held my gaze for 3 seconds longer than normal. Ask your mother. She handles the papers. She's at work. I'll just check the closet. Won't take long. He didn't stop me. He didn't follow me either. He went back to his crossword, but I could feel him listening. The way you listen when you know the next room is about to get very quiet. I went to the master bedroom, opened the hall closet, top shelf, the shelf Tyler said Linda had been cleaning out. 2 shoe boxes, a stack of Christmas cards held together with a rubber band. And behind them, pushed to the back corner, a manila envelope thick. The corners were yellowed. The flap was sealed with packing tape that had gone brittle with age. I pulled it down, sat on the edge of the bed, peeled the tape. No adoption papers, nothing from an agency, no court filings, no placement documents. Instead, a birth certificate, state of North Carolina. Name, Adeline Marie Townsend. Mother, Linda Beckett. Townsend, father blank, and beneath it a single sheet of paper, handwritten, blue ink, careful cursive, dated July 1996. I was 4 months old. Linda, this is the story we tell. She is adopted. We found her through the church network. No one questions the church. Do not let David near her in public. Ruth, I read it twice. My hands were steady, lab hands, but my heart was running a sprint. I photographed the letter, photographed the birth certificate, placed the envelope back exactly where I'd found it, walked out. Frank looked up from the recliner. Find what Youni did? Yeah, Dad, I did. I sat in my car for 6 minutes before starting the engine. Then I called Marcus. I found it. My voice was flat, professional. The same voice I use when I call a doctor with an abnormal result. There are no adoption papers. There never were. My birth certificate lists Linda as my mother. Father is blank, and there's a letter from Nana Ruth handwritten. 1996 telling Linda what story to tell. She designed the entire thing. Marcus was quiet for a beat. Then what do you want to do? I want to talk to David first before anyone else. I'll drive you. I sat in the car a while longer. 3 pieces of evidence. 1 DNA result confirming David as my biological father. 1 birth certificate listing Linda as my mother and no father. 1 letter from Nana Ruth written when I was 4 months old, laying out the cover story like a set of building plans. 3 documents. 1 lie. 26 years. I called Sophie that night. I found proof, physical proof. This goes deeper than either of us thought. How deep? Your father's mother wrote instructions for the cover-up, dated 1996. She told my mother to use the church as a front. Sophie exhaled, long and slow. Take your time, Adeline. I've waited 27 years. A few more days won't break me. Before I went to bed, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, pulled the locket out from under my shirt. The chain was warm from my skin. The little engraved A caught the light. Not a gift from an uncle, a gift from a father who couldn't say the word. I had the DNA. I had the letter. Now I needed the confession. Wednesday, I drove to David's shop alone. Marcus waited in the parking lot of the hardware store 2 blocks away. Close enough if I needed him, far enough to let me do this on my own terms. David was sanding a walnut tabletop when I walked in, sawdust on his forearms, radio playing low. He looked up and smiled the way he always does. Warm, immediate, like I was the best part of his afternoon. Addie, what brings you? I set the DNA printout on the workbench right on top of the sawdust. His smile faded. Slowly, the way stain darkens wood, not all at once, but grain by grain until the original color is gone. He looked at the paper, looked at me, looked at the paper again. His hands stopped moving. How long have you known? I asked. He sat down on his work stool, took off his safety glasses, rubbed his eyes with the back of his wrist. 30 seconds of silence. The sander kept running. He reached over and switched it off. Since the day you were born, the shop was quiet. Just the 2 of us and 30 years of silence between us. He told me Linda and him. It happened when Frank was deployed. 6 months Fort Bragg reassignment. David was 20. Linda was 24. He came over to help with the gutters, then the porch light, then the kitchen faucet, then it was one time, he said. Stupid, wrong. I knew it was wrong. Linda found out she was pregnant a month later. Nana Ruth found out a month after that, and Nana Ruth made the decision. She told me if I claimed you, I'd lose the family. All off it, the shop, the land, everything. He reached toward the locket at my neck. His fingers stopped an inch short. I gave you that because I couldn't give you my name. His eyes were red. His voice cracked. I wanted to tell you every single day, Addie, every single day. I let him sit with that. Then I said what I came to say. You had 10,000 days, David. You chose silence on all of them. He flinched. Didn't argue. Do you know who Sophie Keller is? His face collapsed. He knew. David closed Hi-Si's, kept them closed for a long time, like he was hoping the shop would be empty when he opened them again. Sophie, he said the name the way you say something you've been holding in your mouth for years. Carefully, like it might cut on the way out. 3 years after you were born, I met a woman in BRM Ton, Janine. It lasted 4 months. He pressed his palms against his knees. I don't have an excuse, Addie. I don't have a reason that makes sense. She had your baby. Yes, and you left. Janine didn't want me to stay. She said she'd handle it. She married a man named Tom a few years later. I sent money when I could. Cash, no paper trail. Stopped when Sophie was about 12 and Lorraine started checking the bank statements. I leaned against the workbench. Sawdust under my fingers, the smell of walnut oil and wood stain, and the quiet, desperate mathematics of a man who fathered 2 children he never claimed. You want me to keep another secret, David, for you? He looked at me, eyes wet. Lauren will leave me. You should have thought about that 27 years ago. Please, I'll tell her myself. Give me time. I looked at this man, my biological father, who'd spent 3 decades playing the role of kind uncle. who bought me a locket because he couldn't buy me a last name, who stood in the back row at my graduation and cried where nobody could see him. I wanted to feel sorry for him. Part of me did, but the larger part, the part that spent 26 years being grateful for a family that was already mine, that part was done. I'll give you until Sunday. Sunday came. David didn't tell Lorraine, so I made my own plan. Friday, I met Sophie in person for the first time. Small cafe in BRMtown, brick walls, mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu. I got there 10 minutes early and sat facing the door. When she walked in, I didn't need to check the photo she'd sent me. Brown hair, left side dimple, same jaw. She stopped in the doorway, looked at me, and laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the involuntary kind thatescapes when your body doesn't know what else to do. We have the same jaw, she said. Sit down, Sophie. We talked for 2 hours. She ordered a black coffee and never touched it. I ordered water and drank 3 glasses. Sophie's story filled in the gaps David left out. Janine had finally confessed when Sophie showed her the DNA match, broke down at the kitchen table, admitted everything. David begged me to never tell anyone. He was married. He had his family. He said it would destroy everyone. Sounds familiar, I said. Sophie stirred her cold coffee. I have a dad who raised me and doesn't know I'm not his. Tom still thinks I'm his biological daughter. He sends me a card every birthday, signs it. Love, Dad. Every single year I set my glass down. I have a dad who raised me and doesn't know I'm his brother's daughter. He had a stroke 3 months ago, and my mother used the word adopted to keep me out of his hospital room. We sat with that 2 women, 2 towns, same father, same silence. What do we do? Sophie asked. I'm going to tell the truth, all of it. In front of all of them at Sunday dinner, Sophie looked at me. I'll be there if you want me to. I want you to. Adeline has the DNA. She has the letter. She has the sister she never knew. And David missed his deadline. If you've ever held a truth that heavy and wondered whether to speak or stay quiet, you already know what she's about to do. Subscribe so you don't miss the moment everything breaks open. Trust me, you want to be here for these. Sunday lunch at Nana Ruth's. I showed up on time, 1:00, casserole in hand, smile in place. Linda caught me in the kitchen before I sat down. She pulled me past the pantry into the hallway near the back door where nobody could hear us over the clatter of serving spoons and Frank's cough. Her voice was a hiss, low and sharp like steam escaping a pipe. What did you tell Lorraine at the wedding? Lorraine told me something, Mom, not the other way around. Whatever. She said she was drunk. She doesn't know what she's talking about. I kept my voice level, the same tone I use when I call a physician with a critical lab value. No emotion, just data. I took a DNA test. The color drained from Linda's face. Not slowly, all at once, like someone had flipped a switch behind her skin. Adeline, she grabbed my wrist. Her grip was tight. Her rings pressed into my skin. Adeline, honey, we need to talk about this privately as a family. You have no idea what this will do, or what you did. She switched tactics. Tears came fast, practiced, the exact same tears she'd used when I was 12 and asked about my birth parents. I was 24, Adeline. I was scared. I was alone. Your father was deployed. David was just there. Please, please don't destroy everything. I pulled my wrist free. Gently. The way you remove a blood pressure cuff. Controlled, deliberate, final. You had 26 years to tell the truth. Mom, I'm giving you until next Sunday. She didn't use those 7 days to confess. She used them to build a wall. Monday, Lindackled Tyler. I know because Tyler called me 40 minutes later. Mom says you're making up stories about Dad and Uncle David. His voice was confused. Not angry. Not yet. Just confused. The way you sound when someone tells you something that doesn't match the world you've been living in. She says you're going through something, that you're obsessed with the adoption thing and you're trying to tear the family apart. Did she tell you what the DNA test showed Tyler? She didn't mention a DNAtist. Of course she didn't. Tuesday, Nana Ruth called. Her voice was iron. No pleasantries, no warm-up, no, how are you, dear? Straight to the point. I don't know what you think you found, but you will not bring chaos into this family. I won't allow it. Nana Ruth, I found your letter. 3 seconds of silence. Then you had no right to go through that closet, and you had no right to write that letter. She hung up. Wednesday, Linda called Lorraine. Tyler told me later. Brooke overheard the conversation on speakerphone. Linda's version. Lorraine, honey, I'm so sorry Adeline upset you at the wedding. She's been going through some emotional things lately. We're trying to support her. Lorraine's response. Linda, I said what I said and I meant it. I sat on my porch that night and mapped it out. Linda wasn't just hiding the past anymore. She was actively constructing a new story. That I was unstable, emotional, delusional. She was poisoning the well before I could draw water from it. The woman who'd spent 26 years lying about my identity was now lying about my sanity. Nana Ruth called David that night. Fix this or I will. David didn't answer his phone. Wednesday afternoon, Frank called. His voice was thin, post-stroke thin, the kind of voice that makes you drive faster. Addie, can you come over? Your mom's at the shop. I was there in 11 minutes. He was sitting at the kitchen table, not in his recliner. The table upright like he'd been waiting. In front of him, their wedding photo in a brass frame and the manila envelope. I found this in the closet. He said, your mother moved it, but not well enough. I've been married to that woman for 33 years. I know where she hides things. He'd read the letter. I could tell by his hands. They were flat on the table, pressed down hard like he was trying to keep the room from spinning. Is it true? He asked. I sat across from him, set my phone on the table. Screen up, showing the DNA results page. The DNA confirms it. Dad, David is my biologic father. Frank stared at the screen, then at the wedding photo, then out the window at the backyard where Tyler and I used to catch fireflies in mason jars. He didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was steady, barely. I always knew something wasn't right. The timing, the way your mother acted when she told me about the adoption, the way David looked at you. He paused. But I told myself a lie was easier than losing everything. I didn't answer that. There was nothing Toneswere. Then Frank said the words I didn't know I needed to hear. Quiet, raw, like he was pulling them out of somewhere deep. You're my daughter, Addie. DNA or not, you've always been my daughter. I cried. First time in this whole story. First time in years, if I'm honest. He reached across the table and held my hand. His grip was weak on the right side, the stroke side, but he held on. What are you going to do? He asked. Tell the truth. At Sunday dinner in front of everyone, Frank nodded, slow, certain, I'll be there. Thursday, I went to the house again. This time, I brought the envelope and the printed DNA results. Linda was in the kitchen wiping the counter, the same counter she'd wiped 10,000 times in the same circular motion, like she could scrub the truth off any surface if she rubbed hard enough. She saw the envelope in my hand. The sponge stopped moving. I looked for my adoption papers. Mom Adeline, I can explain. There were no adoption papers, Mom, because there was no adoption. She stood perfectly still. The sponge dripped onto the counter. Drip, drip, drip. I opened the printout and set it beside the sponge. David Townsend, parent, 50% shared DNA. Linda lowered herself into the kitchen chair like her legs had stopped working. The tears started fast, loud, hands over her face, shoulders shaking, the full performance. I was so young, I was so scared, you have to understand. If Frank had found out, I would have lost everything. The house, the family, everything. You did lose everything, Mom. You just postponed it 26 years. The tears stopped just like that, like a faucet handle had turned. And underneath the tears was something harder, something sharper. So what? Her voice was cold. Now you're going to humiliate me in front of the whole family after everything I've done for you. You told me I was adopted so you wouldn't have to admit you had an affair with my father's brother. That's not something you did for me, Mom. That's something you did to me. I am your mother. Then act like one. Tell the truth at Sunday dinner or I will. The manila envelope sat on the counter between us. Neither of us touched it. I walked out. She didn't follow. Friday and Saturday I prepared. I printed a second copy of the DNA results. Photocopied Nana Ruth's letter. The original stayed in my nightstand drawer in a Ziploc bag because 26-year-old ink on 26-year-old paper deserves protection even when the words on it don't. I called Sophie. Sunday 100 p.m. Nana Ruth's house on Route 7. White farmhouse, long driveway. Can't miss it. Are you still in? I'll be there. I'm bringing my own DNA results. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed Saturday night while I laid everything out. Folder, printouts, photocopied letter. He watched me arrange the pages the same way I arranged lab reports. Neat, sequential, tabbed. You don't have to do this publicly, he said. They lied publicly for 26 years. Sunday dinners, Christmas mornings, birthday parties. Every single event was a stage for Thelly. The truth deserves the same audience. He nodded. He didn't argue. Marcus is the kind of man who argues when he thinks you're wrong and goes quiet when he knows you're right. I picked my clothes. White blouse, black trousers, simple, clean. The kind of outfit you wear when you're about to deliver results, not revenge. I clasped the locket around my neck, felt the weight of it against my collarbone. The familiar press of the chain, the smooth oval of the pendant. One last time Saturday night, 11 p.m., I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Marcus's arm across my waist. The house was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioner and the tick of the kitchen clock. What if they hate me? I whispered. Marcus pulled me closer. They lied to you for 26 years. If anyone should be asking that question, it's them. Sunday morning, I put on my white blouse, clasped the silver locket, picked up the folder, and drove to Nana Ruth's house for the last time. 12:45 p.m. Nana Ruth's farmhouse. White clapboard, green shutters, gravel driveway lined with Bradford pears that were just starting to bloom. The house smelled the way it always smells on Sunday. Biscuits, pot roast, and the ghost of 50 years of secrets. Marcus parked behind Tyler's SUV. I carried the folder under my arm like a textbook. Walked up the porch steps, screen door, brass knocker, welcome mat that said, bless this home. Everyone was already seated. Nana Ruth at the head. Linda Toher right, eyes red, shoulders pulled in, gripping a water glass with both hands. Frank across from her, steady, tired, wearing the gray polo I'd ironed for him last week. Tyler and Brooke near the kitchen door. David at the far end, staring at his empty plate like it held instructions he couldn't read. Lorraine beside him, straight-backed, lips pressed together, not looking at anyone. Megan and Jake were there, too, newlyweds. Megan smiled at me. Genuine, the same sweet smile she'd had since we were kids sharing crayons at Nana Ruth's coffee table. 10 people, 1 oak table, 1 lie about to end. I sat in my usual chair, the one near the window, furthest from Nana Ruth. Marcus sat behind me on the bench by the wall, quiet, present. I slid the folder under my chair. Frank caught my eye, nodded, just once small. His face said, I'm here. Nana Ruth said, Grace. Tyler said, Amen. Biscuits went around. Pot roast was served. Green beans with bacon, iced tea in mason jars. 15 minutes of small talk, weather, Jake's new job, Megan's honeymoon plans, the Dogwood Festival next weekend. I ate. I waited. I waited for the peach cobbler. When everyone was full and settled and no one would leave the table, Nana Ruth brought out the cobbler, glass dish, golden crust, steam rising. She cut it into perfect squares the way she's done every Sunday since I can remember. I set my fork down, pushed my plate forward, and stood up. The small talk died. 10 faces turned toward me like a current had shifted in Thurum. I have something I need to say to all of you. Linda's hand flew to the table. Adeline, not here. Here is exactly where it needs to happen. I reached under my chair, pulled out the clear plastic folder, set it on the table between the cobbler dish and the iced tea pitcher. Nana Ruth's voice came from the head of the table. Cold, controlled, the same voice she used to call the women's ministry to order. Sit down, Adeline. I looked at her. 78 years of authority, 40 acres of land, 3 decades of Sunday lunches where nobody said no. No, ma'am, not this time. The room went still. Nobody moved. Even the clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. I opened the folder, pulled out the first page, and I started reading the same way I read lab results every morning at 7 a.m. calm, precise, without a single word wasted. 3 weeks ago, I took a DNA test. I held the page steady, no tremor, lab hands. The results show that my biological father is not Frank Townsend. Frank looked at the table. He already knew, but hearing it said aloud in front of everyone in this room, his jaw tightened, his right hand curled into a loose fist. My biological father is David Townsend, Silence, the kind that has weight to it. The kind you can feel pressing against your eardrums. Tyler stood up. His chair scraped the hardwood. What are you talking about? Brooke put her hand on his arm. He shook it off but didn't leave. Lorraine turned her head toward David slowly like a gun turret finding its target. David didn't look up. He stared at his hands. The same thick carpenter's hands that built rocking chairs in kitchen cabinets and 26 years of silence. Linda started immediately. This is insane. She's lying. Those tests are wrong all the time. You can't trust something you order off the internet. I kept my voice level. I run these tests for a living, Mom. I've processed over 600 paternity panels in the past year. Paternity at 50% shared DNA has a confidence level of 99.99%. These tests are not wrong. I slid the printout across the table. Tyler picked it up. His eyes moved across the page. I watched him find the match. David Townsend, parent. 50% shared DNA. Tyler's lips moved while he read, then stopped. He looked at Linda. Mom, is this true? Linda's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. Megan reached for Jake's hand under the table. Nana Ruth hadn't moved. Her cobbler server was still suspended in midair. A perfect square of peach cobbler balanced on Thege. Mom! Tyler's voice was harder now. Is this true? Linda pressed her napkin to her mouth and started crying. I reached into my bag, pulled out the manila envelope, set it on the table, right beside the cobbler dish, right where everyone could see the yellowed corners and the brittle packing tape. This was in Mom's closet. Inside this envelope is a letter, handwritten, dated July 1996. I was 4 months old. Nana Ruth spoke. I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled the photocopy from the folder and read it aloud. Every word, same lab report voice, same steady rhythm. Linda, this is the story we tell. She is adopted. We found her through the church network. No one questions the church. Do not let David near her in public. I looked at Nana Ruth. Signed, Ruth. The room was so quiet. I could hear Lorraine breathing. You wrote this letter. You designed the lie. And you used the church as your cover story. Nana Ruth didn't flinch, didn't deny it. Her chin lifted a quarter inch the same way it does when someone forgets to say grace before eating. I did what I had to do to protect this family. You didn't protect this family, Nana Ruth. You buried the truth under it, and you built everything. The land, the name, the Sunday dinners on top of a lie. Tyler, still holding the DNA printout, now reached for the photocopy. Read it. His hands were shaking. Grandma, you knew this whole time. Sit down, Tyler. Don't tell me to sit down. The hierarchy cracked right there over peach cobblerand iced tea. I turned to Lorraine, softened my voice, just slightly. She deserved that much. Aunt Lorraine, at the wedding, you said something to me. You said, you know, you look exactly like Uncle David, right? Lorraine nodded, tears on her cheeks, silent. You were right. The front door opened, every head turned. Sophie Keller stood in the doorway. Brown hair pulled back, left side dimple, same jaw as mine, same jaw as David's. She was wearing a blue blouse and dark jeans. She held a folder in her hands, clear plastic, just like mine. Lorraine saw her first. Her hand went to her mouth. David saw her second. He stood up so fast his chair tipped backward and hit the floor. The crash echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. Everyone, I said. This is Sophie Keller. She's 27 years old. She's from BRM Ton and she's David's daughter. David's voice broke. Adeline, stop, please. Sophie stepped into the room. She didn't look at David. She looked at the family, at the face around the table, at the cobbler and the iced tea and the biscuit crumbs and the 26 years of lies laid out on the oak surface like evidence in a trial. My name is Sophie. I spent 27 years being told my father left before I was born. Her voice was steady. She'd rehearsed this. I could tell he didn't leave. He was sitting at this table. Lorraine stood up, looked at David. How many? Her voice was flat, not a scream, worse than a scream. A scream has heat. This was ice. How many more are there? Lorraine, please, how many? David didn't answer. Linda made one last attempt. This girl could be anyone. You can't just walk into someone's house, and Sophie set her folder on the table, opened it, slid her DNA printout next to mine. David Townsend, parent 50%, shared DNA. Same as Adeline's. Linda's mouth closed. She sat back. Her fight was gone. 2 DNA results. 1 table. 1 man who fathered 2 families he never claimed. Linda stood up. The chair screamed against the hardwood. Her voice cracked open like something that had been held too tight for too long. You're destroying this family, Adeline. After everything we did for you, after we raised you, after we gave you a home, I didn't raise my voice. Didn't need to. You lied about who I am for 26 years. That's not doing something for me, Mom. Nana Ruth spoke next. She didn't yell. Nana Ruth doesn't yell. She delivered her words like a judge reading a sentence. If you walk out that door, Adeline, don't come back. You are out of this family. I turned to face her. 78 years old, 40 acres, chairwoman of the women's ministry, builder of Sunday dinners and generational lies. I was never in this family. Nana Ruth, you made sure of that. I held her gaze. The land stays in the bloodline. Remember your words. October at this table. Tyler's face was white. He looked from Linda to Nana Ruth to David. I can't believe you, any of you. David was crying. Head down, shoulders forward, hands gripping the edge of the table. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you. Lorraine cut him off. Her voice was low, controlled, terrifyingly calm. Get out of my house tonight. Pack a bag. I don't care where you go. Frank hadn't spoken through any of it. He sat in his chair with his hands flat on the table, the stroke side trembling slightly. When the room finally went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after an explosion, he spoke. Linda, his voice was gravel. Were there others besides David? She looked at him. Mascara streaked, lips parted. Frank, were there others? She didn't answer. And in that silence, the last wall came down. I stood up, looked around the table. Linda crying into her hands. Nana Ruth, rigid, staring at the wall above my head. David collapsed forward, forehead almost touching the table. Lorraine standing, arms crossed, trembling. Tyler, head in his hands. Brooke rubbing his back. Megan pressing her face into Jake's shoulder. Frank, still seated, still steady, looking straight at me. Sophie stood by the door, waiting, patient, like she'd been waiting her whole life to leave a house she'd just entered. I reached up to my neck, unclasped the silver locket, held it in my palm for a moment. The weight of it, the warmth from 22 years of wearing it against my skin. The little A engraved in careful script by a man who gave me a letter because he couldn't give me his name. I set it on the table next to the manila envelope, next to the 2 DNA printouts, next to the peach cobbler that nobody was going to eat. I spent 26 years earning my place in a family that already owed me the truth. I turned, walked past Sophie, past the screen door with the brass knocker, past the welcome mat that said, "Bless this home." Down the porch steps, across the gravel. Marcus was leaning against the car. He opened the passenger door without asking. I got in. He got in. The engine started. The gravel crunched. And in the side mirror, Nana Ruth's white farmhouse grew smaller and smaller until the Bradford pears swallowed it whole. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. 3 families, 5 days. Here's what happened. Frank moved out of the yellow house within 2 weeks, packed a duffel bag and his blood pressure medication, and drove to the Comfort Inn on Route 12, room 214. He filed for legal separation in May. 33 years of marriage undone by a letter he never should have had to find. Linda stayed in the house alone. The flower shop cut her hours. She couldn't focus, kept miscounting stems, wrapping arrangements with trembling hands. Tyler called her, but the conversations were short, clipped. He'd say, "I love you, Mom." At the end, but the warmth was gone, replaced by something careful and measured, like a man testing weight on a broken step. David moved out the night of the dinner. Lorraine packed his bag for him, folded his shirts, zipped the duffel, set it on the porch. No screaming, no scene, just a closed door and a deadbolt turning. He slept at the Millfield Motor Lodge for 3 weeks, then rented the room above his wood shop. 40 feet of particle board ceiling and a cot that creaked every time he turned over. Megan stopped answering his calls. Lorraine filed for divorce in June. Sophie called Tom Keller, the man who raised her, who signed to every birthday card "Love Dad," and told him the truth. Tom went quiet for 4 days. Then he called back. "You're still my kid, Sophie. Nothing changes that." Janine wrote Sophie a letter. First apology in 27 years and Nana Ruth. The whispers started at Millfield Baptist within the week. Small town. Big news travels at the speed of church parking lots. She stepped down from the women's ministry in May. The 40 acres were still hers. The oak table was still there, but nobody came for Sunday lunch anymore. The biscuits went unmade. The pot roast stayed in the freezer. Frank called me on a Tuesday. "I'm at the Comfort in room 214. Can you bring me my blood pressure pills? I left them on the bathroom counter." I drove over, brought the pills, sat with him for an hour. We didn't talk much. He ate a vending machine sandwich. I drank a Dr. Pepper. The ice machine hummed in the hallway. He looked at me once halfway through the silence and said, "Best lab tech in the county." I almost smiled. 3 months later, Frank found a 1-bedroom apartment on Laurel Street, 6 blocks from the hospital. I helped him move in, carried boxes, hung curtains, programmed his coffee maker. His right hand was getting stronger. He started walking 2 a day. He looked 10 years younger without the weight of a house built on lies. Sophie and I became something neither of us expected. Not friends. That word's too casual. Sisters. We met every 2 weeks, alternating towns. I'd drive to BRM-Ton, she'd drive to Millfield. We'd sit in a booth at wherever and talk about everything and nothing. She liked black coffee and old country music. I liked iced tea and crossword puzzles. We had the same laugh, a short exhale through the nose, followed by a shake of the head. David's laugh, apparently. Linda called 3 times. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail the 3rd time. "I'm your mother, Adeline. You can't erase that." I listened to it once, deleted it. I didn't owe her a response. I'd given her 26 years of silence. She could have a few months of mine. David sent a letter, 6 handwritten pages. I read every word, folded it, put it in the nightstand drawer next to the original manila envelope. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I would someday. Maybe I wouldn't. That decision was mine now. Nana Ruth didn't call, and I didn't wait for her to. In July, Marcus proposed. Kitchen table, no fancy restaurant, no big speech, just a ring and a question, and the steadiest man I've ever known, looking at me like I was enough. I said, yes. On the counter behind him, the DNA kit box still sat on the shelf. White cardboard barcode sticker, the thing that weighed less than a pound and rearranged 3 families in 5 days. I kept it there, not as a trophy, as a reminder. I registered a corrected birth certificate. Father Line, previous LibLink, now reads Frank Townsend. Because a father is the man who shows up with gas station carnations and holds your hand with his weak side. I didn't destroy 3 families. A lie did. I just turned on the light. That's my story. 26 years of silence, 1 DNA test, and 3 families that finally had to face the truth. If this reminded you that you deserve honest answers, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next.